What's up, everyone? It's Mr. Marambo coming at you with more science. We've got a lot of review for you in store today. First, we're going to be reviewing identifying variables in an experiment, in any experiment. There's 3 of them. And also identifying groups in a controlled experiment. There are 2 of them. Make your way to today's instructions and you'll see our goals for today. And I first want us to check out the do now and to really look at this picture of someone else's preparation of their experiment or their investigation. Look at it and see if you can identify 3 different variables, our main 3. First, our independent variable, then our dependent variable, and lastly, our control variables. Go ahead and see if you can find out. You may have noticed that the main difference between pot A, pot B, and pot C is the light in the room, which is the amount of sunlight that this bean plant is receiving. Since we see that that is the difference, then that must be the independent variable because this person, this scientist, changed that on purpose. And there should only be 1 independent variable in any experiment. Why, you may ask? Well, let me tell you why. Say, for example, we not only manipulated the amount of light that this plant receives, but we also manipulated the amount of daily water it received. And let's say that my hypothesis was if I increase the amount of daily water that this bean plant gets, then it would have the tallest or most height by the end of 50 days. If that becomes true based on my data, that the plant, the bean plant with the most daily water does have the highest height at the end of 50 days, then I cannot say that my hypothesis was true. I cannot say that I was correct with my hypothesis because someone can turn around and say, didn't you change the amount of sunlight in the rooms too? And I would say, yes. Then they could say, then that could be the reason why that plant grew the most, not the amount of daily water. At that point, I wouldn't have the evidence to prove that person wrong because I had 2 different independent variables. So either one of them could have influenced the plant height, making my hypothesis invalid and making my research bad because I couldn't prove anything. Just that it was either the amount of daily water or the amount of sunlight that made that plant grow. Now that we know why we need just 1 independent variable, can we see the dependent variable based on this picture? The quick answer is no. Based on this image, I do not know what this person is measuring. It could literally be the height of the plant, it could be the weights of the plant, it could be the color of the plant. Both quantitative and qualitative data is valid here, but I have nothing that tells me that this is exactly, whatever that thing is what they're measuring. So no idea how to determine the DV based on this, but I can tell you what the control variables are. Those are variables that stay the same, and that includes the amount of daily water based on this picture, the type of plants that's being planted, a bean plant, the distance between the sunlight and the potted plant, the material that the pot is made out of, the material of the soil, and you name it, etc., etc. Basically, the control variables is anything that is not the independent variable or the dependent variable. Everything should be listed in your project worksheet, but I just want to make sure that we have answered those questions number 4 through 6. Let's just keep focusing on this do now, shall we? What is the experimental group then? Go ahead and think, what is it? Well, this experimental group or the experimental groups here is all of pot A, pot B, and pot C. They are all being changed on purpose. They are all receiving a different amount of sunlight, which is what this person is trying to figure out. They're trying to figure out how different amounts of sunlight affect whatever they're trying to measure because we don't know what the DV is based on this image. So boom, we found out their experimental group, A, B, and C. The plant with 3 lights, the plant with 2 lights, and the plant with 1 light. So that got me thinking, what is their control group? Give it a guess now. Well, their control group would probably be another plant, an additional potted plant with absolutely no light. So 0 light, total darkness, not even 1, 0. It's not shown here, but that would be their control group that they would test also with A, B, and C. Now, why would they do that? And why is it called a control group? Well, like control variables, control groups are to make sure that your independent variable, in this case, the amount of sunlight, is the thing affecting their dependent variable. It's not the amount of water, because they're not changing that on purpose. That's a control. It's not the type of soil. They're not changing that. That's control. So controls are there to control the experiment and make sure that you're absolutely only determining the relationship between your IV and whatever your DV is. And that's important if you're trying to prove something in your hypothesis. You don't want some random thing affecting your DV. You want to make sure it's the thing that you're changing and not anything else random that's affecting what you're measuring. A control group makes sure that that is the case. So let's say, for example, that you receive your results in this experiment and see that the plant that received all 3 lights, the most light, was the plant that grew the tallest. Let's say you're measuring height. It grew the highest height at the end of 50 days. And then you confirm your hypothesis and say, hey, I am right. The plant that receives the most light will grow the tallest at the end of 50 days. Wrong if you do not have a control group. The only reason why it's wrong is because you wouldn't have evidence if someone told you, hey, what if it's no light that makes the tallest plant at the end of 50 days? That would be, first of all, a completely absurd remark, but second of all, you wouldn't have the evidence to tell them that they're wrong. The control group is also a piece of evidence that tells that person who says that no light causes the highest amount of height at the end of 50 days, it tells them that they're wrong. The control group makes sure that there isn't any other thing affecting your dependent variable other than your independent variable. It's about securing your bases and making sure that your IV is directly relating to your DV and nothing else. And that includes, if you're testing the amount of light, the absence of light. Even as absurd as it sounds, if you don't have evidence that shows that no light means less height that the plant gets at the end of 50 days, then you're still wrong. You need evidence, and that is the bottom line story of why you need a control group in a controlled experiment. While we review the 3 different variables and the 2 different groups in controlled experiments, make sure you review questions 1 through 8 on your project worksheet. If you haven't revised your hypothesis, make sure to check out the short video on how to make a working hypothesis. If you don't have any more questions, feel free to reach out if you do, and have a great day.